Here we go. Scouting the Gators here from Athlon, an opposing SEC assistant coach, says if DJ Lagway continues to develop and stays healthy, they're going to continue to improve. They don't have a killer at receiver, but they're solid at running back. Defensively, they're young, but they finally got some guys in there that look elite. This is a massive year for Billy Napier. He survived because of the changing politics of the game and his buyout, but it ended up working out last season. Now he can show positive momentum with this group and start competing for the postseason. Lagway and that offensive line are legit enough to bring back a true Florida offense. If they can be in the hunt for a playoff bid and start scoring points like those old Gator programs, I think he'll be off the hot seat for a while. Lagway could compete with Arch Manning for best quarterback in the league. Not compete with Garrett Nussmeier for best quarterback in the league. Arch Manning for best quarterback in the league.
Whoever this staff is needs to hire me because I am in alignment with what they are talking about. I think it's very clear that it's either Arch Manning or DJ Lagway is the best quarterback in the SEC. John Mateer might make a case for that before the end of the year, but to me, it's those three and then a significant drop-off and then another significant drop-off and Garrett Nussmeier. So, LSU number 5. Is there a way to bet against like where someone's going to finish? Can you like bet someone will not finish in the top 10?
I know Josh Pate for his show on FanDuel, you can pick teams that will not make the playoff.
Well, so put it this way.
So if you got FanDuel up there, you might can do that. You might can just log in and just go make a bet that LSU will not make the playoff.
Hey, they let us be gambling degenerates up in Pennsylvania, so I'll have to check that out because I'm going to put a sawbuck or two on LSU not making the playoff. I'll tell you that much. You know, one thing that hasn't been mentioned in any of these things is that I think oftentimes we dismiss the impact of schedules, not just when it comes to the quality of the schedule, right? Like Missouri plays nobody this year. Mm-hmm. But the other part of it is how the schedule is constructed. And my concern with Florida is their depth. But if you look historically at the SEC, and even if you look at last year, teams that tend to get clipped late in the year get clipped because they're run down and they're playing on the road. And Florida's road games this year, the tough road games, are almost all early. Yeah. And I think that makes a big difference because I think what happens is as the season goes on, as you get run down, it narrows the window between the good teams and the bad teams as you start playing. So does a Vanderbilt have an opportunity to clip somebody late in the year that they wouldn't have had the chance earlier when everybody was healthy? Does a team like Georgia, are they more apt to maybe get hit? I mean, like you think about last year, LSU and Ole Miss coming into the swamp. That's the thing where Florida had stuff to prove, obviously, but nobody,
and that was
myself,
a beat-up Florida team.
It was, but I think my point is that those games were all close at the half. Mm-hmm. Like, none of the teams, when you get to the end of the year, rarely do you have the ability on the road to run away from your opponent. And so I think having the road games, the at LSU, the at Texas A&M, early in the year sets up really well for Florida to be able to get through sort of games where they might have gotten clipped and then have home games at the end. So you finish the season with Tennessee and Florida State at home. I think that makes a big difference.
Think about Alabama and losing to Oklahoma last year.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, you look at it, you go, how could they lose that game? I still look at that Ole Miss game and go, how did they lose that game against Florida? Especially the way Jackson Dart was throwing the ball around in the first half. I was like, our old defense is back. Like, look what's going on here. And all of a sudden something flipped. But I think the big thing was a couple of fourth down stops for Florida. Mm-hmm. You know, with that big tight end that Ole Miss had been using all year to bulldoze for first downs.
Pegues,
yeah, to get first downs. They get stuffed a couple of times. I don't think they get stuffed in the second game of the year. I think they're completely fresh. I think there's less on film about what they do in those situations. I don't think they get stuffed. And if they complete those first downs in the first half on fourth down, I think that game is completely different. And so I am becoming more and more convinced that when your road games occur is more important than who you play on the road. Okay. And so I think it's a real advantage that Florida's got some road games early in the year because let's say there was an injury to a Caleb Banks or a Tyreek Sapp. I think if you're at home where you've got guys who can get good get off against offensive lines that are sort of stuck because of the noise. I think you can deal with a talent disadvantage at that point. I think if you're on the road, if you're playing a good I think the challenge for Florida will be that Ole Miss game where they're on the road, where they got to go up to the Grove and play up there. I think that'll be one of the things that, if you think about.
I mean, I do want Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp back by week 3 going to LSU.
I mean, I want them there the entire year, but I think my point is that I look at the defensive line and I go, depth is my concern, not talent level. And so I think it's important that in those first couple games, they let those guys get their feet wet and then get them out so that they're ready for those road games early on in the year.
Yeah, interesting. I brought this up to Braden because since he is part of this Athlon magazine, I've shared this anonymous coaching thought with him as well. And this opposing coach, it is an SEC assistant coach, it says. They don't have a killer at receiver. And that stuck because, that was a Trey Wilson 2 seasons ago who was all freshman SEC, did some really good things as a freshman, got injured last year. So this coach, I think, you have to assume knows Trey Wilson. But at the same time, it's hard to disagree with where Florida stands right now because you have to prove it. It is a J. Michael Sturtevant coming in through the transfer portal. He's got to prove it at Florida. We're all excited. I think this is a different thought at the end of the year. Don't get me wrong. I think Florida solves this problem. But saying it right now, I can't completely disagree. We're all excited for Dallas Wilson, and I think he can be that. I think Vernell Brown III can be that. Nashawn Montgomery maybe to an extent as well. Maybe some of the second-year guys. Maybe it's Aiden Mizell that breaks through as well. I have no issue saying it now, but I do think that is a different tune by the time the end of the season gets here.
I mean, yeah, I think what you're saying about them needing to prove it is right? I mean, if you look at it, Wilson averaged 8.8 yards per reception his freshman year. He had a bunch of receptions, but he only averaged 8.8 yards per reception. He had the big sort of jet sweep against Samford, and other than that, didn't do a whole lot last year. Now, obviously, a lot of that's due to injury, but one, he's a small guy, so in the SEC, do you worry? He only played 10 games his freshman year because he had injuries. He played 4 his sophomore year because of injuries. You got to keep him healthy. The other thing is that he is a guy that I think you can use to keep the chains moving. I don't know that he's necessarily a guy who he's not Percy Harvin, right? He's not the guy you give him the ball and say, just get out of the way. This guy will make guys miss. In fact, on those end arounds, they tend to go for like 6 or 7 yards because a linebacker coming out is able to line him up and take him down pretty hard on a fairly consistent basis. That doesn't mean he's not a valuable player. But it means, if you look at like what Ohio State had at receiver last year, like Florida right now doesn't have anybody who's at that level unless Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown step up. And I think that's sort of the open question. Luckily, wide receiver is a place where people can come in and contribute right away. But even that, I mean, that's not a common occurrence. Like what Ohio State had last year is uncommon for a guy to come in and basically go, if that guy went to the draft right now, he'd be the number 1 draft pick. He's just not draft eligible, right? Like, but you could have said that about Percy Harvin after his freshman year. I think after Percy Harvin's freshman year, he could have gone to the pros. I think he definitely would have been drafted the first round if he'd gone to the pros after his true freshman season. And so, look, I mean, if Florida gets a Percy Harvin-ish type impact from either Vernell Brown or Dallas Wilson, then I completely changed my tune. But, if they end up with Khalil Jackson getting a bunch of time at wide receiver, or, if they end up, like, if you get 20 catches from each of those 5-star guys for, 12 or 13 yards per attempt, I would say, hey, that's a pretty good freshman season for those guys. Is it spectacular? No. But it's a pretty good freshman year for a true freshman wide receiver. But it's not going to mean, to use the word killer, I mean, we're talking about like a guy who you just say, all right, I know you're double teaming him. I'm going to throw it up there anyway.
Yeah.
Or you have to scheme to take that guy away, and that's going to leave Trey Wilson open on the other side. And all of a sudden, you're going to start getting worried about Trey Wilson, and now we're going to force you. And this actually, I think, is a fundamental question for Florida this year. is will they be able to dictate to the defense what the defense has to do rather than the defense dictating the offense. So if you think about the drop 8 coverage, the zone coverages that DJ Lagway struggled against last year, there are paths to being able to beat those things deep. But you got to have deep threats to do it. You got to have, one of the easiest ways to beat those sorts of coverages is all the air raid concepts that Mike Leach made popular. If you send 5 guys deep and they're playing a cover 4, somebody's one-on-one. Yeah. Right? So there is always open grass if you send enough guys out there, assuming your guys can win a one-on-one battle. And that's where the complication came for Florida last year in many cases is, 1, Lagway couldn't move around. 2, I think Billy Napier's offense oftentimes is sort of designed to take advantage of zone-type coverages underneath, flooding certain areas, that sort of stuff. And then the third thing is you got to have the studs to take advantage of it. And, we'll see. I think we'll know early on. One of the things that Nick in our magazine pointed out is 99% of the time Florida was in 11 or 12 personnel. So 1 tight end or 2 tight ends. Yeah. 99% of the time. And so, look, Billy Napier, in many ways, his offensive philosophy is like a pair of tighty-whities, man. Like, you know exactly what you're getting from Billy Napier. It's incredibly conservative, but it's supportive, right? Like you know what you're going to get.
There's a baseline of success. All right, there's going to be some success. As much as we want, we'll see. We do hope it expands a bit because my whole thing, you can't recruit these type of receivers and run the same offense. Is that really the plan?
Well, I've said this multiple times this offseason, is that when you have Graham Mertz at quarterback, like your Volvo at quarterback requires that you drive 55 miles an hour on the highway because the whole point of the Volvo is you got 3 kids in the back and you don't want any of them to get hurt. So you purchased the Volvo specifically in order to carry the troops from one place to another. DJ Lagway is a Maserati. So you don't throw 3 kids in the back of the Maserati and go 55 miles an hour on the highway.
It is a 1-seater or 2-seater, let's go.
Telling you right now, what you do is you get in that Maserati and you go 2 miles an hour over the speed limit until you hit the state line in Georgia, and then you put down the accelerator pedal. But when you've got a Maserati, you got to drive it. Like, it's fun. You're supposed to enjoy it. So if Billy Napier decides that he's going to run the exact same offense with the 5-star receivers he's brought in and DJ Lagway at quarterback, the stuff that first guy said is absolutely true. It's like he's literally sitting there like Walter White in his tighty-whitey underwear, and it's like, okay, yeah, like that's a perfect characterization of like what you imagine is going on.
If it's 99%, next year there's going to be a pizza on my roof.
I'll start making meth. I think I'm going to need to in order to like write the preseason magazine next year. I can't imagine that Napier doesn't understand that when you have a gifted guy, you got to give him more rope. The thing is last year with Mertz, he was actually starting to give Mertz a little bit more rope, and then Mertz gets hurt. And I think they went back to 11 and 12. Not that they were going that far outside of it, but I think they went to more conservative stuff when DJ Lagway was in there, in many ways because the install package for Lagway originally was supposed to be 1 out of every 3 drives, right? And so Lagway needed to know how to run maybe 15 or 20 plays, and that was it. And all of a sudden, we even saw it in the second half against Tennessee. Florida basically ran the same 6 plays the entire second half, and the only time they were able to do anything was when Lagway broke contain and just made a big play. But Tennessee basically knew what was coming. And obviously anytime they were in the pistol, they knew it was a little run off tackle, and were able to stop that too. So I think there's going to be more variety from the standpoint of Billy Napier is now more comfortable with what he has. And again, I think if he doesn't,
I'm kind of claiming that too. Maybe it's hope, part of it. But I do think when you have your pieces, but I don't know. We should at least get our answer though.
Well, that's true. So I said earlier that you don't have to project anything on offense in order to say that they're going to score. You have to project that Billy Napier is going to press down the gas pedal and not be like, I know I have a Maserati in the garage, but I really feel like going to the store in my Volvo.
Or I don't want to get a scratch on it. Or I don't want to mess it up.
Oh my goodness.
It stayed in the garage.
I'm really interested.
I just like to look at it.
Well, here's the deal. We will know week 1 because the Sharks are going to not put up much of a battle. And the question will, I can remember a couple of years ago when Florida had a couple of cupcakes and we were sitting there going, oh, this will be great. We'll get to see the backup quarterback. And it's like 22-7 or something going into the fourth quarter. And we're still watching the Graham Mertz show going, what is going on here? Like we need, put them away, like put your foot on their throat. And I want Harrison Bailey to throw as many passes as DJ Lagway in the first 2 games of the year. And that should be the goal. The goal should be 42-0 at the half in both of those games with the ball flying all over the place. Yeah. And you know what? If that means Jaden Baugh goes, hey, why am I not getting the ball anymore? Who cares, dude? 42-0. Like, get that ball flying all over the place. And look, I think, and I hope, and maybe it is just hope, but I think that Napier and Callaway are going to be bright enough to figure out that they need to let it go, and they need to be that it's a whole lot easier to win games when you score 35 to 38 points than when you have to eke them out 21 to 17.